help me welcome Jeff Vane and Darren Sugiyama to the stage.
I'm going to briefly talk about a little bit of the genesis of our program, of our proprietary, our premier financing program, leverage index arbitrage. I had a 10-year NFL career, and during my 10-year NFL career, very early on, I had a premium finance policy. That was my first exposure to life insurance. I purchased a premium finance life insurance policy, and a lot of the pain points, a lot of the troubles that you deal with going through the process of some of the things we talked about earlier, collateral calls, unforeseen collateral increases, things of that nature, personal guarantees I dealt with as a client. A lot of the things in dealing with that with our program, wanted to eliminate that. So I was a very entrepreneurial entire career. Opened up several restaurants, got involved in real estate, got involved in a lot of different things. My first entry into insurance was on the P&C side. College roommate of mine said, "You need to touch the money one more time." That's what I did. So I got into P&C. When you're going through getting your license, studying, doing the textbooks and things of that nature, ultimately that process, you learn what not to do. You learn how to be ethical, you learn how not to break the rules, you learn how not to get in trouble, but you don't know, how to sell this, insurance, how to build a business. So during that process, I bought every book that I could find on Amazon. One of the books that I bought was my partner's, Darren Sugiyama's book. So that, we get this question a lot, how do you guys connect? How did you guys meet up? That's how we met. I bought his book on Amazon, read it, enjoyed it, did some research on him, ended up going to one of his seminars. So just give you guys a little bit of background, but next I'm going to bring my partner Darren up on the stage and we'll take over from here.
So we'll get into our program, what makes us different. We'll look at a couple case studies, and then we'll look at a couple applications about how we can use our program, not only in the business world, but also for individuals. So let's start off talking about the risks of premium financing. We all know what the risks are. If you've got half a brain and you've never done a premium finance policy before, you should be scared out of your mind to do this. Because of everything we read on Google, it's all negative, and then you hear all these stories about policies blowing up. We hear it all the time. So the risks that kind of come along with the concept of premium financing, they include what happens if the borrowing rates increase. Right? We already heard some folks talk about that today. What happens if the policy doesn't perform as illustrated? Not that that would ever happen. And then what happens if the premium financing intermediary can't get the loan in place? So I've heard all these crazy stories about people rushing at the 11th hour, and everything starts to fall apart. And as the folks that spoke right before this said, if you're working with someone that doesn't understand the game, you're setting yourself up for not only an upset client and a lot of embarrassment, but a big E&O claim and a big chargeback. So we'll talk about how our program mitigates a lot of those risks. The thing that I think everyone ought to be concerned about is the perfect storm. Right? What happens if the borrowing rates go up at the same time the policy doesn't perform very well, at the same time the client runs into cash flow problems? If all that happens at the same time, and then maybe you've heard of stories like this happening before, the client's going to be a bad situation if the premium financing program isn't put together properly. So we really pride ourselves in being fully transparent. Right? Transparency is our thing. And as I walk you through a few of these case studies, you'll get to see what I'm talking about here. So we'll look at first case study, male age 55, $10 million in face, and lives in Florida. Okay, so one of the things I think is really important to discuss, and this is, I teach this all over the country to insurance agents, is being aware of the situation you're stepping into. And I think a lot of times, what we as agents are not aware of is what I call the unknown enemy. Right? You think you've got a good relationship with a client, they like you, they smile, they tell you they're going to move forward, and all of a sudden you get backdoored. And whenever you get backdoored before by an unknown enemy, it happens. And so a lot of times you go in with your best strategy because you think it's mathematically the best, and you don't realize that the prospect is going to make an emotional decision. Even if it doesn't make any mathematical sense, sometimes they're going to go with something that's inferior to what you showed them. So part of our sales process is we're always going to show the client just about every foreseeable option in terms of categorical option they could go with. So we'll start off, we'll show them GUL even if they didn't ask for it. We'll show them a non-finance policy. We'll show them what we call traditional first dollar financing, where the client's borrowing all the premiums. And then we're also going to show them our Premier program, leverage index arbitrage. And I'll walk you through the difference between each of these strategies here. Before we do that, we'll run through a quick summary of this particular client. When we show them all four options, we look at the total outlay, so pretty close across the board here, a little over $3 million. What the cash value looks like after 40 years. We're also going to look at what the death benefit looks like in the 40th year, and then we're also going to look at the cash value IRR, right? The net IRR, outlay versus cash value at the end of the rainbow. So the first one we'll look at here is what we call traditional premium financing, right? First dollar financing. Again, we're going to borrow all the premium, and the client's going to post collateral. So essentially here we're looking at a 7-pay, $664,000 annual premium. Again, years 1 through 7. And if you look there on the left yellow box at the top, it says cumulative premium finance loan balance, right? So that's how much they borrowed. The policy cash value, when you borrow all the premiums from day one, is always going to be underwater for the first several years. And that's why you have to post collateral, right? So in the far left-hand column over here, that is essentially the projected collateral, which is the shortfall between the borrowed premiums and the policy cash surrender value, plus 10%, plus the expected interest payment. And so the first year collateral is projected to be $424,000. But even if you illustrate this with a static return, in this case it's 5.76% rate of return, even on a static return, it's projecting that you're going to have to post a little bit more collateral in the second year, right, about 25 grand more. In the third year, you're going to have to post a little bit more, about 50 grand more. And as much as you talk to the client, hopefully you're talking to the client and being very transparent about the collateral increase that they're going to have to post. Even if you do a good job with that, what are the chances that client's going to remember what you talked about a year ago? Right? You're going to shake your head. Maybe you've been through this, right? You know they're not going to remember, right? They're going to get collateral amnesia. And whether you did a good job or you didn't do a good job, or you haven't signed a disclosure or whatever, you're still most likely going to have a ticked off client in the beginning, and then you got to resell the damn case all over again, which I know you love doing, right? It's the worst thing ever. So we can do the first dollar financing program, and I'll talk a little bit about when that is more applicable than our Premier program, which is leverage index arbitrage, just a second. But we'll get into leverage index arbitrage. With this program, you don't need to post any outside collateral. This is about the most conservative method of premium financing I've ever seen. So same client here. In this case, we're going to have the client pay a first-year premium out of pocket, $575,000, and then borrowing is going to start in year 2, okay, to the tune of $679,000. Right? This is also a 7-pay. So there's a cumulative premium borrowed, a little over $4 million. Okay, and then we're showing in this particular example, we're showing the cash value paying off the loan in the 16th year. Now, in our software, we've got a lot of really cool point-of-sale software capabilities where we can change the payoff year, we can change the interest rate, we can change all these different things on the fly, on the spot. Because the worst thing, most frustrating thing as an agent, is you go out with this great proposal, and they say, well, can I see it this way? You say, sure, let's have a meeting next week. You go back to your office, you rerun the proposal, you come out next week, you show it to them again. Well, can you show a loan payout in the 17th and a half year with you're doing 27 different proposals. So to be able to handle all of these variations on the spot at point of sale really condenses that sales cycle dramatically. And it just makes it look really cool. Okay, so in our program here, and then if you notice there in the third year, the total loan balance, okay, is less than the cash surrender value. So in this particular program, leverage index arbitrage, you're going to have a 95.5 loan to value. In other words, if you have 105% of the total funds borrowed in cash surrender value, the client does not have to post outside collateral. Why? Think of it as if you were the lender, right? If you're the bank and you're going to put out a loan for, use $1 million, and you see that the policy cash surrender value is $1,050,000, and you're first in line, right? There's collateral assignments against the policy. Do you need outside collateral? You don't. The policy is the sole collateral. So what happens when you don't have to post the outside collateral? All these other cool advantages here. Client doesn't have to sign a PG, right? No personal guarantee. If the policy is owned by an entity like a company, they don't have to sign a corporate guarantee either. So huge benefit, and ultimately that makes the loan agreement non-recourse to the borrower, with the sole recourse being the policy asset. So think about it from an underwriting standpoint, both from or specifically from a lending standpoint. When the lender looks at the collateral requirement, if the policy is a sole collateral, all we do is we run the policy assuming a bunch of donuts in a row. So you show the policy with a 0 credit. The lender looks at that and says, geez, if I loan this guy, whatever it is, 600 grand, and you put it in, what's the policy cash surrender value? If it's north of the request to borrow funds, loan gets approved just like that. So I'll give you an example. My wife was sitting right over here. When we did the first year of funding in her policy, which is the second year of the policy, we submitted 2 years tax returns and a personal financial statement on mid-Monday. We woke up Wednesday morning and the policy was already funded. So we tell our clients it's a 5 business day turnaround time. Most likely it'll be more like 2. Why? Because the lender isn't really financially underwriting the client so much. They're really underwriting the carrier and the design of the policy. Right? Again, if you're the bank and you're looking at your collateral being, the sole collateral being the policy, as long as that policy is north of 105% of what they're saying they want to borrow, that's about as low risk a loan as you could possibly get. So let's talk about borrowing rates. Okay, we typically use the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve, the 12-month yield curve. We can use LIBOR. Right now, yield curve is a little bit lower. Yesterday it was 2.52. Today it's 2.5. And then the lender will add a spread on top of it. Now, depending on the size of the loan, the lender's spread is going to be a little bit bigger or a little bit less. The highest spread on the first year is 250 basis points. On a larger loan that's a little bit north of $10 million, they'll drop that down to $1.75. Okay, so lending rates right now, roughly 4.5%. And then after the first year, the lender drops their spread 25 bips. Okay? Now we talked about the risk of what happens if the borrowing rates go up. So we model this in a number of different ways. And again, we can do this right on the fly. This was done a few days ago. So 2.54%. If the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve is 2.54%, obviously the lender adds their spread on top of that. But we're going to let the client pick how much they want to see that U.S. Treasury daily yield curve increase on an annual basis. All right? So we'll put that number in right up here. On the bottom there, that's the schedule. That's the last 21 years of the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve. Now, if you look at the compounded annual decrease of the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve over the last 20 years, it's decreased at the compounded rate of 5.31%. We can use that as a benchmark. I typically like to show an 8% annual increase, because what I'm trying to do is way under promise so that I can way over deliver. And so every advantage we could give our program and give the policy is actually done the other way. So we don't use participating loans. We only use fixed loans. Right? When we show the rate increase, we over-project the rate increase. And then we let the client pick the schedule at which they want to see that annual increase at. So the drop-down menu here, we can either pick 10, 10, 10, 10. What that means is that shows the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve increasing at 8% for 10 years, and then decreasing at 8% for 10 years, increasing for 10 years, decreasing for 10 years. Or we can show the rate increasing for 20 years and decreasing for 20 years, or we can show the interest rate increasing every year for 40 years in a row. So I love it when I get one of those CPAs in front of me that's trying to like shoot my plane down, you know what I mean? I'll give them all the advantages. I'll stack the deck against our program to the maximum so that at the end of the conversation, they're going to run out of reasons to not do this. I call that checkmate. All right. Another thing that makes our software really unique is that we are able to model the policy performance using back-tested periods of time that include volatility and poor sequence of returns. So we show 5 different 40-year constructed periods. The first one's pretty basic. It's just the last 40 years, 2018 going back 40 years, during which time the S&P 500 compound annual growth rate is 11.56. Compound annual growth rate, not the average return, the actual compound annual growth rate. Second period of time, we show the last 20 years, rolling back from 2018. We take that 20-year period and we run it back to back, creating a hypothetical 40-year period during which time the S&P compound annual growth rate was 5.59. The next one we do is the best 20-year period that ain't ever going to happen anytime soon. For the blue skies people, we show it anyway just so they can see what would happen. It's 1980 through 1999. We would take that 20-year period, run it back to back. For the pessimists in the room, we take the lost decade, 2000 through 2009. We run that back to back, 4 decades in a row, during which time the compound annual growth rate was negative 0.99, negative 1%. And by the way, for the anal people in the room, those S&P returns do not include dividends. So it's mimics the policy. And then we have this funky thing here. It's my favorite one. We call this the sandwich. We start and end with the worst 10-year period, and sandwiched in between there are the last 20 years. Okay? During that 40-year period, compound annual growth rate, 2.25. To me, that's where the sale ought to be made. Not based off AG 49, not making it all fluffed up. I want that client making the decision based on a very adverse situation. So we'll start off with the last 40 years. We'll show you what the model looks like. So here's the 40-year look back. Okay, in that green section there, the left column, those are the years, 2018 going back 40 years. The middle column is what the S&P 500 did in those corresponding years, not including dividends. And then the right column, that's what the policy would have credited. In this case, we're showing a 0% floor and a 9.25 cap. I love the uncapped version that a couple carriers have, where they take the first 5 points, the first 6 points. I prefer that over the cap, but again, for the sake of this case study, we're showing the 9.25 cap. Okay, so the client pays the first year premium, then they're going to borrow the rest and pay interest payments. We don't do the free insurance game, we don't do the interest accrual crap, we don't do the high early cash value riders, there's no smoke and mirrors, no gimmicks, I hate that stuff. Okay, so after a 40-year period, assuming that the look-back period, which also includes the policy charges, non-guaranteed coverage charge, premium loads, the whole thing, what we call the TPC, or the total policy cost, which we deduct from the gross index credit of the policy, which is going to give us that orange column there, which is the actual net cash-on-cash return of dollars in and policy cash surrender value. So in the last 40 years, compound annual growth rate, net 5.93% in the last 40 years. What's great about this is if you're ever dealing with an AUM guy that's trying to say that life insurance doesn't give you good returns, or the policy expense is too high, or agent commissions kill the returns, whatever it may be, I love it when they say that, because we're going to show them, go back to this, we're going to show them a comparison. So I think that net 5.93% is pretty damn good, especially in the state of California. They're high income earner, high net worth guy. That's going to be, what, 10%-ish or so gross in a managed account, maybe 11, depending on their income. Short-term capital gains tax. So I think it's good, but good compared to what? And that's the biggest challenge I think insurance agents face when they're selling an accumulation deal, is they say, oh, isn't this so great? Compared to what? Or the CPA says, oh, those are bad, compared to what? So here's what we do. We model a hypothetical managed investment account, and we're going to use the same back-tested period, okay? And then we're going to ask them, what percentage of the portfolio do you want to see equities versus bonds? Equities, we're going to use back-tested S&P returns with dividends, and bond returns, we're going to show historical 10-year T-bond returns in the blue. We're also going to get their adjusted gross income, so we calculate their short-term and long-term capital gains tax rate based on their state of residence. We're also going to ask them what percentage of the portfolio do they want to see taxed long-term versus short-term cap gains tax, and we're going to ask them what they're paying in advisor fees. Here we're showing a 50 basis point advisor fee and an all-in investment fee. of 1.35%. And then we're going to show the exact same investment / contributions going into this hypothetical managed investment account as the outlay in our program. So you got the first year premium in the first year, then you got the expected interest payments ongoing. Invested in this managed investment account. And what does it look like? We'll blow it up here. The outlay again is exactly the same. 40th year value, 13 million versus 24 net in the policy, net of loans. IRR, that's a big difference. You look at that and you go, oh, it's not that, it's 50% difference in IRR. And of course you have the death benefit, the cherry on top of the cupcake. So for a lot of our cases, they start out as estate planning / death benefit focused cases, but then they very rapidly move into accumulation cases. We did a case, which I'll show you a little later on, 65-year-old, it was an estate planning case, pure death benefit. Ended up being a death benefit / accumulation case, which is really cool. Policy size increased 50%. Okay, so we also used, again, the 20-year look back, right? 20-year look back policy did, S&P didn't perform quite as well. S&P did 5.59%, which is kind of interesting. AG49 is 5.76, right? So we're pretty close, but we have volatility here, right? 2000, 2001, 2002, S&P was negative 10, negative 13, negative 23%. So the policy would have credited 0, 0, 0, right? So showing poor performance, poor sequence of returns at the beginning is really important when you're going to stress test a premium finance design, because as the policy isn't growing, yet the interest that the client is paying is going to look kind of like this, is that going to be sustainable? So that's what we always model for the client. Again, if we compare it to the managed investment account, look at the 40th year value, 6.4 million in the managed investment account net, 19 million in policy cash value, net of the loan. IRR 1.84% versus 5.19%, and of course you got the death benefit. All right, last 20 years. But this is where the sale should be made. A lot of agents, when they see me show this, they freak out. You're going to show my client 2.25? Yeah, I'm going to show your client 2.25. I'm going to show them getting 3 zeros in the first 3 years of the policy. And I'm going to show them all these awful things happening at the same time. We're going to show a borrowing rate increasing at the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve rate increasing at 8% compounded per year for 40 years in a row. Mr. Smartass CPA. We're also going to show the policy doing 2.25 compounded annually, which again, we're starting out with 3 zeros. And we're going to show the client running into cash flow challenges. Now, we don't do this as the plan, what I'm about to show you. We do this to show the client if the crap really hits the fan and you're going broke, how are you going to keep this policy in force? Now, the carriers love to hear that, right? How are we going to keep the policy in force and not go into lapse mode? So we will actually show the policy cash value subsidizing the interest payment above and beyond what the interest payment would have been had the borrowing rate not increased. So you ever have a client say, well, can you get me a fixed borrowing rate? Well, we can get you a fixed borrowing rate, but it's going to cost you too much. It's a crappy deal. Get the variable borrowing rate, and then if you run into cash flow problems, let's make sure we design a policy to be able to sustain that by subsidizing the overage. So this is what I'm talking about here, okay? So the worst 10 years at the beginning, worst 10 years at the end, last 20 years sandwiched in between, compound annual growth rate of the S&P 2.25. And we show the first 3 years of the policy, negative 10, negative 13, negative 23% S&P returns, policy to get 3 donuts in a row. And we're showing the borrowing rate, the U.S. Treasury daily yield curve increasing 8% per year, every year for 40 years in a row. And that column right there, that is the cash value subsidizing the larger interest payment if the client's going broke. Right? Again, this is not what we're selling. We're modeling the stress test to show them this is your out if you're going broke, and you need to lean on the policy value to help keep the policy in force and not lapse the policy because you can't make the interest payments. And even with all of that, look at the net. The net's greater than the raw S&P compound annual growth rate. Why? Several reasons. Leverage, you got the 0% floor. You've got the tax-free growth. And again, is it good? Well, compared to what? Well, if you do the same thing in the managed investment account, look at the difference in IRR. Again, we're a little bit more than double. So regardless of whether it's an estate planning case or an accumulation case, we always show what I just showed you because we want to kill that unknown enemy. Right? The guy that's managing his money that's going to try to talk him out of doing this. Right? We need to prepare ourselves for that. I'm going to go back and touch on something I said I was going to talk about, and that is when would you have the client borrow all the premium versus have them pay the first year interest payment? I'm sorry, the first year premium payment. Where that might make sense in some cases, I mean, they got to sign a personal guarantee, got to post outside collateral, all that stuff. But where that sometimes might make sense is if they have investments with unrealized gains and they don't want to liquidate and pay the capital gains tax to do that asset transfer into the policy. That's when sometimes it makes sense to have them post the collateral. But we can do both, we show them both, and it's completely up to them. So here's a few case studies here. I love this one. Case got brought to us, estate planning case. The incumbent agent was showing him a 10-pay GUL, 65-year-old. Okay, so it was a little over $800,000 in annual premium, so he's going to pay $8.2 million in premium to get $20 million in death benefit. Right, so clearly not a cash value play. We came in with our program, total outlay $1.99 million instead of $8 million. I mean, come on, you can't do the cheat well, man. So we showed him this, he loves it. And then remember what I said about the unknown enemy? We thought we were only going up against GUL, but we always show the alternate choices, even if they're inferior. So another firm came along showing interest accrual, but they're having the client finance 90% of the premiums, pay 10% of the premiums, and then accrue the interest. Okay? And this is going to blow your mind because as much as I see cases out there where agents are selling interest accrual, when you see the math where these things can blow up, you'll never sell interest accrual again. Okay, so they're accruing all the interest, they're not making the interest payments, they're accruing the debt, they're rolling the debt back into the principal loan balance. And in the 17th year, their loan balance is now $29 million because they rolled up all that interest. But they realized that they only borrowed $20.1 million. So they borrowed $20.1 million, but now they're in debt $29.4 million. Oh, but don't worry, Darren, the policy will service the debt. Okay, well, how are you going to do that? Because in that year, you're $29.47 million in debt to $29.47 million in cash surrender value. So what are you going to do? Oh, it's no problem. We'll just pay off the loan over the course of 11 years. So they're going to draw down $3.2 million per year, each year for 11 years to pay off the bank. So it's going to cost them $35.6 million to pay off the $29.4 million when they only borrowed $20.1 million. That seem like a good deal? First of all, in order for this to work, the policy has to do 7.12% every year with no zeros. So let's just say that was a viable option. Let's just say that was still on the table. Okay, no problem. We'll show our program, leverage index arbitrage, side by side. Our outlay $1.99 million versus $2.01 million, so roughly the same total outlay. We'll look at the difference in cash value over a 40-year period. $11.9 million versus $52.3. Why is that? I'll tell you why. One is because they had to strip all that debt out of the policy, out of the cash value, right? So it's going to compound, with the remainders going to compound not as efficiently. But then also they use higher cash value riders. Higher cash value riders, not only does that put all of us in a high liability situation for roughly 5 years in the chargeback, which none of us like, obviously, but it also crushes the long-term effectiveness of the cash value accumulation. It kills the client's cash value. Here's a 20-year look back, $2.6 million versus $33.3. And then when we show the worst 10-year period going back to back to back to back, policy lapses. Now, how many times do you think these firms that are showing interest accrual show the option where the policy lapses? You think they're showing that? Yeah, right. So here's the final design. The guy loved the program so much, he goes, what's the max I can do? You love it when the client says, what's the max you can do? He goes, I want 100 million. I go, bro, you ain't gonna qualify for 100 million. He goes, how much can I get? I said, you can apply for 57? Don't think you're gonna get it. Why not? So he goes through underwriting, comes back, $30 million. He said, all right, I'll take it. I said, all right, I'll give it to you. So the case went from 21 million in face to 30 million in face. $2.5 million first year premium, and then he borrowed 12 million, $6 million a year. Sorry, $2 million a year for the next 6 years. So it's really interesting where the case starts versus where it finishes. A lot of times, the client thinks they want one thing. They only think they want that because they haven't seen all the options. When we show them all the options, now it's like you want option A, option B, option C. Eliminate one, now you're down to option A or option B. Who cares which one they pick? If they pick option A, you win. If they pick option B, you win. Right? That's a good situation to be in. Here's another interest accruals case study. 57-year-old male, standard non-tobacco. Okay, so they start off paying this $86,000-ish amount of, I call it voodoo interest payments. They say it's $80,000 in interest, and then the other $6,000 or so, I think, is drinking money for someone. And then they're going to roll up all the debt, right? So that's the accrued loan balance in the left-hand column there. And the interesting thing about the way they're showing the accrued loan balance, you realize if interest rates go up, right, it hurts the pocketbook a little bit if you're paying the interest. But if you're rolling up the interest, it's going to kill your overall strategy because the accumulated debt is going to grow and grow and grow and compound and compound. So they're showing a 3 basis point total annual borrowing rate increase. That means in order for the borrowing rate to go from 4% to 5%, it's going to take 33 years. Does that seem realistic? I think that's kind of laughable. So here they borrowed $7.2 million in premium. If they only show a 3 BIP rate increase on the borrowing rate, they're going to accrue the debt. Now they're in debt $9.4 million, and they only got $10.4 million in cash value. So they're going to show the loan payoff the year after that. Now they're showing $1.3 million in cash value, but then they're yanking out $319,000 in income drawdowns. What kind of wizardry is going on here? They're showing participating loans. So you can make anything look good if you just manipulate the numbers. And it's crazy because I can't tell you how many proposals I see where Jeff and I will be working on it. It's usually Jeff is the one that's working on it, designing it. And it'll take them, like we worked on a case yesterday, we missed the 2 sessions, it took us 2.5 hours, 3 hours, because we're trying to figure out what's going on here. Like, because we're trying to re-engineer the policy. And this one we re-engineered it, so we can show an apples-to-apples comparison. And we found the fundamental difference is this is a PAT case. AG49 rate was 6.17% last year. Well, now it's 5.76. So we run the policy illustration, right? There's the premium, the accrued loan debt. And if you try to use that to pay out the policy lapses in year 14. That's the difference. That's the only difference is that the illustrated rate went from 6.17% to 5.76. If that doesn't scare the bejesus out of you, I don't know what will. I mean, we looked at this and said, Jesus Christ. So here's what we did. Okay, so we redesigned 3 different options so we could see them side by side. Again, being sensitive to the unknown enemies. So we showed GUL non-financed, we showed first dollar financing with collateral, right, where they're borrowing all the premiums, and then we showed our leverage index arbitrage program. Again, we could do all 3, right? So I don't care what to go with. I'm not here to be right, I'm here to serve the client. But if we look at them side by side, GUL just wasn't even a candidate. But first dollar financing with collateral versus leverage index arbitrage, outlay, pretty darn close. But look at the difference in policy cash surrender value after 40 years. Just a huge difference. Now, how is it that the outlay can be so similar, yet the cash value performance be so different? Well, in the leverage index arbitrage program, their first year outlay is the first year premium, right? Now, they're going to have to post a similar amount in outside collateral if they do the first dollar financing one. So we say that the policy is you're either going to put the collateral inside the policy or you're going to post collateral outside the policy. The difference is if you post it inside the policy, you're not going to run into all those additional headaches. Like what happens if the policy doesn't perform or the guy's asset changes or whatever, and you got to recalculate that collateral, and you're going to ask them to post more collateral. The other thing is because you're borrowing 1 year less premium in the leverage index arbitrage program, your annual interest payments are going to be lower, right? Because your cumulative loan balance is less. And then when you go to yank the money out of the policy to pay off the loan, you're pulling less money out of the cash value of the policy because you borrowed less. So that's why the numbers are so crazily different. And that is literally the exact same product from the same carrier with the same target, with the same face. So again, they want to borrow the premiums, we'll gladly do it. We'll gladly do it. It's rare is that situation going to come up though, where mathematically it makes sense to do that. And again, look at the death benefit over 40 years, 11 million versus 17. Now, if it was just this, I mean, that's reason enough. Look at the cash value IRR difference. Well, here's the cherry on top of the cupcake. If we run this at AG 49 max, first dollar financing, we only went out to age 95 here, because we only went out 40 years. That policy lapses at age 100 at 5.76%. This is the stuff that you should be worried about. This is the stuff that should keep you up at night when you think about premium financing. Because if you don't have the ability to model all this stuff, which I know you don't, that's going to be a really rude awakening when the chickens come home to roost. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Selling the policy, I've heard people say, selling the policy, it's not easy, but that is actually the easier part of this difficult transaction. You got to manage the loans, redo the loans every year, and you got to make sure that you're communicating to the client so they understand what they're getting themselves into. So we always say the math doesn't lie, right? Our goal is to mathematically show the client, completely objectively, what their options are side by side, show them the advantages and the challenges of each program, and let them pick, right? Completely unbiased. So we always say the math doesn't lie. Plus, I'm Japanese by ethnicity, which means I'm Asian, so I'm genetically superior at math. So I told that joke with a group in Salt Lake City, a bunch of good Mormon boys, and nobody laughed because they're so polite. I said, it's okay. It's okay, you can laugh. But don't laugh too hard. All right, here are the 5 biggest failures that we see when it comes to premium financing. First one, showing a static positive arbitrage it's just such a cheating game, right? Well, what if I could get you money at 4% and your policy would perform at 6%? You have a 2% positive arbitrage forever. Yeah, what if that didn't happen? Right? That's what I'm saying. Anyone can show a hypothetical example that works to their advantage, but if that doesn't happen, where's the policy going to be at? Where's the client going to be at? All right? Second one, we talked about this already, collateral amnesia. Even if the best of the best communicators, like in our program, we have a client sign an internally produced document called the Client Memorandum of Understanding. And in that Client Memorandum of Understanding, it's a couple pages long, and it talks about the process of borrowing the premiums, how the floor and the cap works, the crediting method, the liabilities, collateral potential. It's everything you could possibly think of that could go wrong is disclosed in that piece. And again, most people look at that piece and say, there's no way someone's going to sign and move forward after they read this piece. It's like the only reason you say that is because you don't know how to explain it. It's like the client will so appreciate the transparency if you have the guts to show them the transparency. If you don't, you might make a sale, and you might make some money. And you might die before the client realizes the whole thing blows up, and maybe you don't care. I care. You know? All right, the third thing, loan underwriting. What happens if the intermediary can't get the loan placed? I mean, I hear these cases where you put in the app, right? You do the pyramid, and then you put in the app, and how long does a big case take to get through underwriting with the carrier? Ballpark, what would you say? 3 months? Yeah, if you can get. What happens if you're working with a pain in the butt doctor and they're not getting the medical records? And how long could that drag out for? 3 to 6 months. Yeah. So 3 to 6 months. How long is the pyramid good for? 6 months. So the policy gets approved at 5 months and 29 days. Your pyramid's going to expire the next day. So what do they say? Oh, just pay the minimum premium. Just get it enforced. And don't worry. I'm working on the financing. We're almost there. We're almost there. We're almost there. And then almost there, it turns into a month, to 2 months, to 4 months, to 6 months. The whole thing blows up. You get a big chargeback. You got a pissed off client. So the loan underwriting in our program, if they're posting collateral, right? I mean, you got to do some. The owner's got to do some due diligence. If they're paying the first year premium, however, you don't deal with any of that the first year. The policy's enforced. Second year comes along, that's where the financing starts, or where they finance the premiums, and the lender's going to look at the policy and say, hey, Darren, Jeff, let me see the policy run at a 0 credit. So if we load in 600 grand or $1 million or whatever it is for that second year premium, and the policy gets a 0 credit, what's the cash surrender value? If it's north of what they're thinking of lending, bingo, it's approved. Again, 5-day business turnaround time is what we say. It's usually done in a day and a half, 2 days. So it makes your life so much easier. And then same thing with the renewals. Jesus, I mean, I get that there's a way that it's always been done, and I also believe in innovation. And if you can get rid of having to collect 27 different brokerage accounts that go up and down, the most recent, and their CPA's got this, the bookkeeper's got this, you get rid of all that crap. If they're just looking at the policy, all you gotta do is get an enforce of the policy run at a 0 credit. You send it to our lender looks at it, boom, approved, policy funded. That simple. They do have to submit 2 years tax returns and a personal financial statement or a corporate financial statement if it's going to be entity owned. But the lender is not underwriting the financials. The lender is underwriting the policy and the carrier. And that's why the turnaround time of the renewals, as well as the first year the premiums are borrowed, happens so butter smooth with us. The fifth thing here is the way the loan docs are set up. Again, this is Jeff's old premium finance policy when he's a ball player. It essentially says that he has got to be the personal guarantor in the event of Kim Jong-un bombing North America, in the event of world famine, in the event of, no matter, he's on the hook. We talked to someone yesterday, they said they had a big case, everything's ready to go, the guy's got, net worth is out of this world, and at the 1 yard line, the guy says, I don't want to sign a personal guarantee. Lost the case. Just from that one little thing. So being able to eliminate all those variables, very advantageous. So again, with the leverage index arbitrage program, again, that's the one where they're paying the first year premium, no personal guarantor requirements, no corporate guarantor requirements, no outside collateral requirements, non-recourse to the borrower. If they're going to finance all the premiums, which we also do, they're going to have to post collateral, they'll have to personally guarantee the policy. Again, we do that. We show them both. Very rarely do they go away from our proprietary program. Okay? Top 3 sales opportunities, right? How do you mine your current client base and make this program applicable to just mine your current book? The big one is 1035 VUL policies that are scheduled to lapse. We've run across, just in the last week, last 4 days, we've run across 2 of these. So one of them was a $4 million survivorship policy, VUL, client, husband and wife, 72, age 72, age 73. Run at 6%, the policy is scheduled to lapse at age 91, 92. So it's like, okay, you're either going to continue to make these premium payments and hope you die before you turn 91, or you look at an alternative option, and that is we took the $582,000 in cash surrender value, 1035'd it into a new policy, so we went from VUL to IUL, and they financed the rest. So their premium payments before were just north of 40 grand. Their interest payments, once they borrow all the premiums, are about 100 grand. And Jeff did this case. I said, how did you get the client to go from 40 grand to 100 grand outlay? He goes, well, you can pay less and end up with nothing, or you can pay more and end up with something. It's like, okay, pretty straightforward. But very easy to 1035 policies if you just get it in force and it shows that it's going to lapse early. Right? And then they financed $1.5 million. Relatively small financing policy. Okay, second one, we call this the leveraged hybrid. Sometimes you're going to come across clients, they're whole life junkies, they love whole life. We had a client in New York, have a client in, actually New Jersey, doctor, 55 years old, wanted $20 million, and he's being courted by, what carrier was the whole life guy with? It was Mass Mutual. And so it's kind of back and forth, so we're competing against the career agent with Mass Mutual. And he's telling them about the dark side of IUL, right? So we're showing financed IUL, they're showing whole life. So then Jeff flies out there and shows them this. He says, do you understand the difference between whole life and IUL? Now, we're thinking they do, because they're working with some pretty, big producing agents out there. The guy says, pretty much. Jeff says, okay, explain to me how you feel about the floor and the cap. Client says, what's a cap? What's a cap? So he had to start from ground zero, explain the background of whole life, explain the background of IUL, what the advantages and challenges are on both sides. And he says, what you could do is what we call our leveraged hybrid. 2 separate policies, one whole life, one IUL. So split the $20 million in half, the $10 million whole life, $10 million IUL. And then we can consolidate the loan into one loan. First year premium, $1.3 million, finance $10.6 million. But again, having that consolidated on one loan agreement, nice and clean. Client feels like they're buying into a program instead of buying a product, or 2 products in this case. And we buried the incumbent agent because the incumbent agent isn't showing them this. And then the third one here, I love this one, leverage group guaranteed issue. So we've got a couple medical groups we're working with where they want to retain their doctors. So it's kind of a non-qualified deferred comp layout. They can finance the premiums. A couple carriers have group GI products. Usually, I know PAC, it's 10 lives or more. Got to be similar job class, similar incomes. But this one, Jeff just finished out on the East Coast, private university. What they did is they're looking at this as a way to kind of kickstart an endowment, small private university. So what they did is they put key man policies on the faculty members, so 41 professors, we financed it, paid the first year premium, again, use of the funds is for the future endowment. And what they loved about it is now they can take this program and market it to all their other donors and their future donors about how they can participate in this unique, creative donor program. So, I mean, this is just scratching the tip of the iceberg. There's so many really unique, exotic, cool, sexy ways to apply all of our programs to these really unique situations. I mean, you can bore you a key man, all that stuff, cross-purchase, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Our sales cycle, I hear people say this all the time about how all these premium finance cases, oh, they're so confusing, they take forever to close, oh, it's like a 9-month, 12-month, 24-month sales cycle. Like, we've never experienced that. We get deals done quick. And a lot of it is because, again, our software, we can show that client all those different variations on the spot. So we're not doing multiple meetings, 27 different meetings with 27 different proposals. I love this. This text interaction between Jeff and one of our agents outside of Chicago. Jeff says, how long were you working with that prior to us? They were working with another premium financing group. He says, you started with them in late March. It was, how long was it? 9.5 months? They couldn't get anything done? Jeff meets a friend of this agent at lunch, hooks him up with this agent, starts working together. 3.5 months later, the case is paid. $359,000 in target. 3.5 months after meeting us. Not after we engaged with the client, after meeting us. Here's another guy. When we get Bob and Jack done, that will wrap up over $250,000 total target. Not bad for us only working together for 3 months or so. Cheers to that. He says, what's your favorite flavor of bourbon? Jeff says, the what kind? But again, we're talking, 3 months from engagement. So these cases don't take long. The reason the case takes long is that the client doesn't have ultimate clarity. All right? It's not 100% sure that this is the right thing that client should do. Again, our whole process is I want that client at the end of that first call saying, I literally have run out of reasons to not do this. And once you're there, you're in checkmate, it's go time. I'll wrap up with this. Some agents will sell us, well, your split seems high. We charge 33%. If we have to get in a car and a claim, we charge another 25 points. If we do something exotic like an ESOP repurchase obligation deal or a charitable thing or something with the university, we charge 50. And I said, you could get it cheaper, you know, and you're going to get something that is not quite as good. It's not just not quite as good, it's going to put you in harm's way. All right? These are the things that you got to be concerned about with working with a premium financing shop that doesn't really have this down, that hasn't covered all their bases, that hasn't fully transparently disclosed all the liabilities. I mean, you can get in just a bad situation. I've got a friend of mine that's a FFR principal, and he said, I've done one premium financing case, and I literally don't sleep well at night. Why doesn't he sleep well at night? Because he's afraid of collateral calls, he's afraid of the policy blowing up, he's afraid of lawsuits, he's afraid of all this stuff. And so I say, when you do a premium financing case that's not with us, you get all fired up when it closes, you get a big check, and here's what happens sometimes. So it's like you're going to sleep every night with the 40-pound anvil hanging over your head, and you're praying the earthquake doesn't come. So to the right over here, we've got some information about our company, our backgrounds. There's a case study in there. There's some cool stuff. There's a grid that talks about the advantages and the challenges with the different programs. There's a white paper in here that talks about our leveraged index arbitrage program. Really cool stuff. So we say, no, don't just do it, man. Just do it right. If you do this right, if you take the conservative route, you do this right for the client, you don't oversell it, you let the golf club do the work, right? If you just do it right, it's fantastic for you, it's fantastic for the client, and everyone wins. All right? Great talking to you guys.